1 month into the silent treatment, my boyfriend, Liam, abruptly posted on Instagram, "Getting engaged." The group chat with our mutual friends exploded. Everyone tagged me frantically. "Congrats, Ava. OMG, spill the details. Champagne on you." The virtual confetti was still falling when Liam added someone new to the chat. A girl named Chloe Davis. Her profile picture was aggressively cute, all doe eyes and filters. Then Liam dropped the bomb, tagging everyone. "Chill, guys, this is Chloe. She's the future Mrs. Carter." The chat went dead silent, utterly frozen. I stared at the screen, the words blurring. A choked laugh, sharp and humorless, escaped my lips. Chloe, meanwhile, started her saccharine greetings, working her way through the list. She saved me for last, sending a glittery princess gif blowing a kiss. Followed by, "Ava, hi, so nice to finally meet everyone. I'm a little younger, so please bear with me, okay? Hope we can all be friends." The faux sweetness, the patronizing undertone, it made my stomach churn. I didn't bother replying. I left the group chat, muted notifications from Liam and Chloe, and turned off my phone. This wasn't the first time Liam had pulled a stunt like this, a public humiliation designed to put me in my place. Every fight, every freeze-out, ended with me apologizing, smoothing things over, swallowing my pride. This time felt different, bigger. Was it real? Just another twisted game to provoke me? Honestly, I was too exhausted to care, too tired of guessing. I blocked him on everything: phone, social media, the works. Out of sight, out of mind, or so I hoped. The kicker. It was my birthday. This mess had curdled any celebratory mood, leaving a familiar ache of disappointment. Screw it. I changed into a simple black slip dress, hailed a cab, and headed to a new cocktail lounge downtown. I'd heard about moody lighting, craft drinks, exactly the kind of place to disappear for a while. A few artisanal cocktails later, the edges blurring nicely, 2 guys materialized at my table. Persistent, overly familiar. I gave them a polite brush-off, shaking my head, but they weren't taking no for an answer. One grabbed my arm, his grip tightening possessively. Panic flared. I tried to stand, to pull away, but felt pinned. My eyes darted around the dimly lit room, searching for an escape, and landed on a familiar face in a corner booth. Liam's cousin, Dr. Julian Vance. The city's golden boy surgeon, brilliant, young, devastatingly handsome. He was off duty, talking with a friend, dressed in a sharp black shirt and dark trousers, glasses perched on his nose. Even in the low light, his profile was striking: the strong jawline, the high bridge of his nose. His hands, usually wielding scalpels with unnerving precision, held a rocks glass, fingers long and elegant. The man holding my arm was getting bolder, his thumb stroking my skin. A desperate idea sparked. "Julian," I called out, my voice higher than intended, maybe a little shaky. He didn't turn immediately, but his friend glanced over, saw my predicament, and nudged Julian, gesturing discreetly in my direction. Julian lowered his glass, his gaze following his friend's gesture. His eyebrows lifted slightly as his eyes met mine across the room. I yanked my arm again, futilely. Seeing Julian just sitting there, observing, a wave of frustration and vulnerability washed over me. "Julian, please." My voice was smaller now, almost a plea. He carefully removed his glasses, folded them, and placed them on the table. Then he rose, unfolding his long frame, and walked over, his presence immediately commanding attention. "Excuse me," Julian's voice was low, calm, but with an unmistakable edge of steel. "She's with me. Please leave." The 2 guys sized him up, clocked the expensive watch glinting on his wrist, the quiet authority in his stance, and mumbled apologies before melting back into the crowd. "Ava, drinking alone?" Julian's gaze swept over me, a frown creasing his brow as he took in my slightly flushed face and the near-empty glass. Not the best idea for a young woman. One strap of my dress had slipped slightly off my shoulder. His eyes flickered over the exposed skin for a fraction of a second before moving away. He turned, retrieved his jacket from his booth, and draped it over my shoulders. "I'll call Liam to pick you up." "We broke up," I mumbled, pulling the soft fabric of his jacket tighter around me. I stood, a little unsteady, the alcohol hitting me harder now. My eyes, probably glistening with a mix of booze and unshed tears, met his. "Julian, could you take me home, please? Ava, I'm Liam's cousin." His voice held a note of caution. "I know." I took a small, wobbly step closer. He instinctively reached out, his hand landing firmly on my waist to steady me. "Steady now?" "Can't." I leaned into his touch, tilting my head back to look up at him. "Dizzy, can't stand up straight." I saw it then, a faint, telltale flush creeping up the tips of his ears. It jolted a memory. Last month, a routine checkup for breast tenderness. My GP had referred me to a specialist, and the appointment turned out to be with him, Dr. Vance. During the clinical breast exam, professional and detached as he was, I'd noticed that same blush coloring his ears. "Ava," he said, his voice slightly strained. He tried to gently pull my arm, guiding me towards a chair. "Let me call your roommate? A friend?" Instead, I wrapped my arms around his waist, pressing myself against him. "Julian," I murmured, my voice muffled against his shirt. "You told me to come back for a follow-up on that breast tissue thing, the fibrocystic changes. I forgot. Could you check it again tonight?" His ears went from pink to crimson. He gently but firmly grasped my hands, pulling them away from his waist, creating a small space between us. He cleared his throat, his professional demeanor snapping back into place, though the stiffness in his shoulders betrayed him. "Have you had any pain since finishing the medication?" he asked, his tone serious. "Yes," I sighed, pressing a hand to my left side dramatically. "Especially right before my period. It gets so swollen and achy." I looked up at him through my lashes. "Dr. Vance, maybe the prescription wasn't strong enough. You need to come in for a follow-up during office hours, tomorrow." "But it hurts now," I insisted, biting my lip. "Isn't there anything faster?" For the pain, his brows, unfairly attractive even when furrowed, drew together. "And you decided drinking would help." My eyes welled up, partly the alcohol, partly the sting of his disapproval, mostly the raw hurt of the day. "It's my birthday, Julian," I whispered, the words catching in my throat. "And Liam announced he's engaged. To someone else." He looked down at me, his expression unreadable for a moment. Then, or maybe it was just wishful thinking fueled by alcohol, I thought I saw a flicker of something soft in his eyes, something like sympathy, maybe even pain for me. His car, a sleek, dark SUV, was spacious and smelled faintly of leather, and that clean, almost sterile scent that clung to him from the hospital. I sat in the back, cradling a small, perfect cupcake with a single pink candle flickering on top. Julian had bought it for me at a late-night bakery on the way. I made a wish, blew out the candle, and then, emboldened by champagne courage and a reckless impulse, I reached over the seat and dabbed a tiny smear of frosting onto his cheek. Julian, notoriously meticulous, notoriously averse to mess, flinched slightly. His brow furrowed in clear, if mild, annoyance, but he didn't seem truly angry. I remembered observing him before my appointment that day. He must have washed his hands 7 or 8 times between patients. His hands were beautiful, long-fingered, capable, strong. A fleeting, inappropriate thought crossed my mind. Those hands could probably span my waist perfectly. Heat rose in my cheeks. He turned his head slightly, giving me his profile. The smudge of white frosting stood out starkly against his sharp cheekbone. Before I could second-guess myself, I leaned forward again, tilted my head, and gently licked the frosting off his skin. Sweetness dissolved on my tongue. "Ava!" His voice was a low growl. His hand shot out, fingers closing around my wrist, not hard, but firm, arresting my movement. The car's interior was dim, lit only by the passing streetlights, throwing his face into sharp relief. He was impossibly close. I saw the controlled chaos in his eyes, a flicker of something losing its careful restraint. And the hand gripping my wrist, was it trembling slightly? I could smell the faint, clean scent of antiseptic clinging to him, overlaid with the richer notes of the whiskey he'd been drinking and the expensive cologne underneath. The combination was dizzying. How could anyone be this unfairly attractive? I remembered seeing him around campus back in college. Julian Vance. Pre-med legend, effortlessly cool, impossibly focused. Campus heartthrob, though he seemed utterly unaware or uninterested in the trail of wistful sighs he left behind. I'd been one of the anonymous admirers, finding excuses to study in the same library section, angling for a glimpse of him bent over his textbooks. Once, miraculously, I'd snagged the seat directly opposite him in the library's quietest corner. He'd studied, utterly absorbed, for 2 solid hours. I'd spent those 2 hours pretending to read, mostly just watching the way the light caught the curve of his jaw, the intensity in his eyes. And then, mortifyingly, I'd fallen asleep. He'd woken me gently when he packed up to leave, handing me a tissue with a shadow of amusement in his eyes. "Might want to wipe your mouth," he'd murmured, nodding towards my textbook where a small damp patch glistened. I'd wanted the floor to swallow me whole. I avoided him like the plague after that. The next time we met properly was years later. I was with Liam, newly official. And Julian? He was Liam's cousin, the older, intimidatingly accomplished cousin Liam both admired and slightly feared. I remember the shock, the flicker of surprised delight seeing him again at Liam's family home. His reaction, a cool, polite blankness, utterly remote. Liam had brushed it off later. "That's just Julian," he'd said. "Super serious, workaholic, total ice king. Honestly, people wonder if he's even into women." "Ava." Julian's grip tightened slightly on my wrist, pulling me closer, jarring me back to the present, to the charged silence in the car. "Look at me, who am I?" "Julian," I whispered, the name feeling intimate on my tongue. "Are you sure?" His voice was low, intense. My head felt fuzzy, thoughts swirling. Liam's cousin. But Liam was over. Done, wasn't he? That connection felt severed, meaningless now. "Dr. Vance," I corrected myself, trying for formality for distance. "My name," he insisted, his grip unwavering, pulling me almost into his lap. His eyes held mine, his nose nearly brushing against mine. Julian Vance," I stammered, my gaze flickering away, unable to hold his intensity. Was the frosting good? A strange question, catching me off guard. "What?" I blinked, trying to process. Before I could form another word, he leaned in and kissed me. The ghost of sweetness lingered on my lips from the frosting. He deepened the kiss, his tongue tracing the seam of my mouth, seeking entry, claiming the last remnants of the cream. My mind buzzed, a dizzying roar filling my ears. My hands fluttered against his chest, lacking any real strength to push him away. Not that I truly wanted to. "Close your eyes," he murmured against my lips, his breath warm. Then, a soft bite, sending a shiver down my spine. His voice, husky now, dangerously seductive, whispered near my ear, "You don't kiss with your eyes open, Ava. Didn't your boyfriend teach you anything?" Ex-boyfriend, I managed, the word muffled against his mouth. He pulled back slightly, his thumb tracing my jawline, his eyes dark and intense. "Good," he breathed, and kissed me again, deeper this time, a kiss that consumed thought, leaving only sensation. He lived in a stunning penthouse apartment downtown, conveniently close to the hospital. The kind of place with breathtaking views and astronomical rent. As he keyed in the code to his front door, the lock clicking softly, he paused, turning to face me in the hallway's dim light. "Ava, are you sure about this?" His question hung in the air. Stepping through that door, we both knew what it meant. No ambiguity, no excuses, just 2 adults making a choice. I stepped forward, closing the remaining distance between us, and wrapped my arms around his narrow waist from behind, pressing my cheek against the cool fabric of his shirt. "I'm sure," I whispered. Whatever mess my life was, whatever debt I owed Liam, whatever toxic cycle I was trapped in tonight, I wanted this. If I was going to burn bridges, let it be for someone I'd once foolishly, secretly adored. My college crush, Dr. Perfect. No regrets there. He unlocked the door, pushed it open, and pulled me inside. Before the door even clicked shut behind us, he had me pressed against it, his mouth finding mine again in the darkness, urgent and demanding. "Slow down," I gasped, my fingers tangling in his hair, pulling him closer even as I protested. "It's all yours," the words, breathless and drunkenly bold, slipped out, whispered against his ear. His kiss faltered for a beat. In the shadows, he cupped my face, his thumbs stroking my cheekbones. He pressed a soft, almost reverent kiss to my temple. "Okay," he murmured, his voice thick with restraint. I hadn't expected Julian, so lean and refined in his clothes, to be quite so defined underneath. Later, after the first time, he pulled on a pair of loose-fitting sleep pants and went to get me a glass of water. I lay sprawled on the ridiculously comfortable bed, feeling boneless and thoroughly wrecked, watching him walk away. The elegant lines of his back tapered down to a narrow waist, a perfect V. A flush warmed my cheeks, remembering the details hidden beneath his clothes just moments before. Liam had always painted Julian as this near asexual monk, too dedicated to medicine, too exposed to the clinical realities of the human body to retain any base desires. He sees too much, gets desensitized, Liam had speculated. How wrong he was. Those hands, so skilled with a scalpel, possessed an entirely different kind of startling strength and precision in the dark. "Here, drink some water," he returned, holding out the glass. I didn't want to move. "Too tired," I mumbled, affecting a pathetic little pout. He sighed softly, but sat on the edge of the bed and patiently held the glass to my lips. "More," I murmured when the glass was half empty, still thirsty, still wanting something. He looked down at me, a knowing glint entering his eyes, tinged with that dangerous heat I was quickly learning to recognize. My breath hitched. That look alone sent a jolt through my system. "Anything you want," he said, his voice raspy. He set the glass aside and leaned over me, his shadow eclipsing the soft lamplight. That wasn't exactly what I'd meant by more when I woke the next morning. Sunlight streaming through a gap in the heavy curtains, Julian was already gone, presumably at the hospital. A small notepad lay on the bedside table. "Breakfast is on the counter. Reheat if it's cold. Took the liberty of calling you in sick today, rest. I'll be back for lunch." His handwriting was neat, precise, like everything else about him. I stared at the note for a long moment, a strange ache tightening my chest, making my eyes sting. It felt kind, too kind. After a long, internal struggle, I carefully tore the note into small pieces and dropped them into the wastebasket. I showered quickly, the hot water sluicing away the remnants of the night, but not the confusion swirling inside me. Dressed back in my clothes from yesterday, feeling rumpled and out of place in his immaculate apartment, I left without waiting for him to return. Yes, I'd had a crush on him years ago. A silly, adolescent fantasy. I'd never imagined anything real could happen between us. Julian Vance belonged to a different world. His family, his career, his sheer brilliance placed him leagues above me. Last night, it was an anomaly. A moment of weakness, of seeking comfort, maybe revenge, maybe just escape. For him, it was probably just a convenient, temporary diversion. Why wait for the awkward morning after conversation where he gently let me down? Better to just disappear. A clean break. Pretend it never happened. I'd barely unlocked the door to my own small rental apartment when my phone, now switched back on, rang. "Liam." I hesitated, then answered. Best to make the breakup official, clear the air, even if he wouldn't like it. "Where are you?" His voice was casual, almost nonchalant, as if yesterday's social media bomb hadn't happened. "Mom wants you to come over for dinner tonight." The sheer audacity of it was staggering. I felt a cold mix of disbelief and weariness. "Liam, I thought we were done yesterday." He scoffed, irritation creeping into his tone. "Ava, come on, you know how I am, I mess around. Yesterday was just messing around." A joke. He sounded exasperated, as if I were the one being unreasonable. "I'm almost at your place. Get ready, okay? Be downstairs in 10. Didn't you hear me? We broke up, Liam." "Are you serious about this?" His voice hardened. "Yes, I'm serious. I'm done playing these games. Is this because I called Chloe the future Mrs. Carter? Is that what this is about?" He sighed heavily. "She's just an intern at my dad's company, Ava, a kid. It meant nothing. Stop being so damn sensitive. I don't care who she is, Liam. It's over. Please don't contact me again." I moved to end the call. "Ava, wait." His voice dropped, taking on a low, menacing quality. Are you really going to burn this bridge? After everything? My stomach plummeted. After everything. Right after college graduation, my world had imploded. A horrific car accident. My father, killed instantly. My mother, clinging to life in the ICU for 2 agonizing months. And Liam had appeared seemingly out of nowhere during that nightmare. He'd covered the staggering medical bills, fronted the money for the legal settlements related to the accident, handled everything with an efficiency I couldn't muster in my grief. He'd even arranged my parents' funerals. He'd spent time, money, resources endlessly. For me, a recent graduate, suddenly orphaned and overwhelmed, there was no way to repay him. Accepting his romantic advances had felt less like a choice, more like the only path available. An unspoken transaction. Now his words "burn this bridge" hung in the air, heavy with the weight of that insurmountable debt. A bitter smile touched my lips. He was right. What right did I have to walk away? Even knowing about his affairs, the string of other women, including 2 of my own former colleagues he'd slept with, rubbing my nose in it with girls like Chloe, I was the one who owed him. I was the one without leverage. Taking from him meant I couldn't leave. The price of his help was my compliance. Ava, his voice softened, back to his practiced, placating tone. You're my girlfriend. Those other girls mean nothing, you know that. Don't be mad. Come on, get dressed. Mom and Dad are expecting us. He'd made his point, reminded me of my place, and now he was offering the olive branch. If I didn't take it, I was the ungrateful one. He played around, his personal life a mess of casual hookups and blurred lines. But I was presentable, educated from a respectable if ordinary background, with a decent job. Liam's parents, though clearly unimpressed by my lack of family connections or wealth, tolerated me because I was infinitely preferable to the other women flitting in and out of his life. They'd always maintained a polite distance, never fully endorsing the relationship. This dinner invitation, initiated by them, was a first. A calculated move, no doubt. As I numbly changed my clothes, a notification popped up on my phone. A friend request on a secure messaging app. Ava, it's Julian Vance. Seeing his name felt like a physical blow, a sharp pang deep in my chest that stole my breath. I leaned against the wall, clutching my shirt, waiting for the wave of complex, painful emotion, shame, regret, longing to subside. Tears pricked my eyes, but I forced them back. I knew I'd been bottling everything up for too long. Last night's recklessness was proof of that. A desperate, foolish escape. It wouldn't happen again. Couldn't happen again. With a deep breath and a surge of bleak resolve, I declined the friend request. He didn't send another. He didn't call. In the silent language of adults, my message was clear. Rejection. Someone like Julian Vance, accustomed to excellence and likely possessing a healthy dose of pride, wouldn't pursue someone who pushed him away so decisively. He wouldn't chase. When I went downstairs, Liam's expression held a familiar, smug satisfaction. He knew he'd won. Again. I got into his car without a word. He reached over, trying to pull me closer, but I flinched away, shaking my head. Fuck, he muttered, annoyed. Then, with a shrug, fine, whatever. We can wait till after the engagement party to touch you then. At the Carters' sprawling suburban house, Liam's parents and his younger sister, Sophie, were waiting. Sophie had always been frail. She'd had a kidney transplant over a year ago, but hadn't recovered well and rarely left the house. Liam's mother, Carol Carter, greeted me with uncharacteristic warmth. Ava, dear, so glad you could make it. Come, sit down. During the small talk, she even asked, with surprising solicitude, Liam mentioned you had a checkup last month. Everything all right, dear? Fine, thank you, Mrs. Carter. Just some minor fibrocystic changes. Nothing serious. Oh, good, that's wonderful news. She seemed genuinely relieved, almost effusively so. She patted my hand. Ava, honey, you and Liam have been together nearly a year now. We were thinking, perhaps it's time to pick a date. Get engaged properly. Sounds good to me, Liam chimed in casually, scrolling on his phone. Getting tired of playing the field. How about next month? Ava doesn't have her parents anymore, poor thing, Carol continued, her voice dripping with faux sympathy that made my skin crawl. Getting married sooner rather than later would mean she has family again, people to look after her. She squeezed my hand, her smile wide and bright, yet somehow off. Something about the entire evening felt unsettlingly strange. The Carters were almost too welcoming, too eager. As we were leaving, Carol pressed a brand new designer handbag into my hands, an extravagant gift. "Don't you worry about the engagement party, dear," she said conspiratorially. "We'll handle everything. Make it a truly memorable occasion. You just relax and look forward to it." Standing on the driveway, watching them wave us off, Carol and her husband beaming, Sophie standing beside them, pale and fragile as a porcelain doll, a sudden chill traced its way down my spine. Liam dropped me off at my apartment building and drove away almost immediately, already on the phone. From the snippet I caught, it sounded like Chloe, the little fairy. I didn't react, just watched his taillights disappear, feeling numb and exhausted. As I walked towards my building entrance, a figure detached itself from the shadows beneath a large oak tree. Julian. A cigarette glowed briefly between his fingers before he dropped it and stubbed it out under his shoe. He called my name, my steps faltered. "Dr. Vance." I stopped, forcing myself to sound calm, detached. "Why didn't you wait for me this morning?" His voice was low, tight with controlled emotion. A wave of dizziness hit me, the memory of the morning, the shame, the impossible longing. I forced a brittle smile. "Last night was a mistake, Julian. I'd had too much to drink. Let's just pretend it never happened, okay?" He stared at me, his eyes growing colder, hardening until they felt like chips of ice. "Just like that, Ava? Is that how little it meant? Are you always this casual, this careless with yourself?" The accusations stung, raw and unfair, but maybe deserved. Tears threatened again. I blinked them back fiercely, lifting my chin. "Think of it as me blowing off steam," I said, the words tasting like ash. "A one-night stand. You got lucky, I guess. I was offering." His jaw clenched, a muscle twitching near his temple. He reached into his jacket, pulling out a pack of cigarettes and lighting one with hands that weren't quite steady. Smoke curled around his face, momentarily obscuring his expression. He looked impossibly handsome, even angry. The harsh lines of his face softened slightly by a vulnerability I hadn't expected. I remembered last night, tangled in his sheets, crying softly from a mix of pain and release, and how he'd held me, awkwardly gentle, murmuring apologies, his voice thick with unexpected guilt and tenderness. "Easy, Ava, I'm sorry. I didn't know it was your first time." Not my first time ever, but the first time feeling anything other than numb obligation in far too long. He'd misunderstood, but his concern had felt real. I dragged my gaze away, forcing down the lump in my throat. "If there's nothing else, Dr. Vance, I should go up." I started to turn away. "You didn't break up with him, did you?" he asked quietly. "That's my business, Julian." "Ava, if you're in some kind of trouble." "I'm not," I cut him off, my voice sharper than intended. "Thank you for your concern, but I'm fine. Please just leave." I looked at him then, met his eyes. The cigarette between his fingers had burned down, a long ash threatening to fall. He hadn't noticed. Instinctively, I reached out, my fingers brushing his as I flicked the ash away. It scattered into the night air, disappearing instantly. Like us. Like whatever fragile connection we'd briefly had. I was tied to Liam, chained by a debt I couldn't repay. Julian might feel some fleeting attraction, some sense of protectiveness, but I couldn't drag him into my mess. I wouldn't use him, wouldn't let him pay Liam's ransom. It would taint him, taint us. "I'm going inside." I turned my back, forcing myself to walk away, not looking back, ignoring the quiet command that followed me. "Get the follow-up scheduled, Ava, soon." His voice was low, serious. "Your health matters. Don't let something small become something serious." I didn't answer, just hurried into the lobby, the tears finally spilling over as the heavy glass door swung shut behind me. Liam and Chloe were practically glued at the hip, their sickeningly sweet interactions splashed across social media. I tuned it out, pouring every ounce of energy into my work. At the end of month review, my team hit top performance metrics. We went out to celebrate, and peer pressure led to a few too many glasses of wine. The combination of exhaustion and alcohol triggered the familiar sharp, stabbing pain in my left breast. Back home, I downed painkillers and white-knuckled it through the night. The next day, needing medical attention but desperate to avoid Julian, I booked an appointment with a different specialist at the same hospital. Fate, however, had other plans. When my name was called, I pushed open the examining room door and froze. There sat Julian, crisp white coat, mask partially lowered, looking through patient files. My first instinct was to bolt. "Ava," he looked up, his voice stopping me in my tracks. "Dr. Peterson had an emergency. I'm covering her appointments today." "Oh, I'll reschedule then." My face felt clammy. Lack of sleep, pain, and the hangover had left me looking drained and pale. Definitely not how I wanted him to see me. "Ava," he stood, pulling his mask fully into place, though his eyes remained fixed on me. "I'm a doctor first. Come in, sit down." His tone brooked no argument. During the examination, he was the epitome of professionalism. Calm, focused, objective. His clinical detachment somehow made my earlier flirtatious suggestion feel cheap and inappropriate. "Does this hurt?" His fingers pressed gently but firmly. A sharp intake of breath, a low groan escaped me before I could stop it. "Yes, Julian, it hurts." His hand stilled. That familiar telltale redness crept up above his mask, tinting his ears. He cleared his throat abruptly, withdrew his hand, and turned away. "All right. You can get dressed." I hastily pulled my clothes back into place, my own cheeks burning now. "It seems like standard fibrocystic changes, likely aggravated by stress and lifestyle," he said, writing notes on a prescription pad, his back partially turned. "We'll adjust the medication, and I recommend some physical therapy sessions as well. It's manageable, nothing to panic about." He tore off the prescription slip but didn't hand it to me immediately. "Also, minimize caffeine and alcohol, get more sleep, manage your stress." Standard advice. "Wait here," he said, finally turning back. "I'll have the nurse get the medication for you from the hospital pharmacy." "Oh, I can do that myself. You need to start the physical therapy today," he cut in smoothly. He glanced at me, then readjusted his mask. "The therapist scheduled for this afternoon is male. It might be awkward. I'll handle the first session myself." "That's really not necessary," I protested, flustered. "It's fine, doctors are doctors." "No." He stepped closer, unbuttoning his white coat. "It's not fine. I don't want anyone else touching you." I stared at him, momentarily speechless. His eyes held mine for a long moment, intense and possessive. "Come on," he said softly, turning towards the door. Numbly, I followed him to the physical therapy room. Lying down on the table, removing my shirt again, felt even more awkward this time. I turned my head away, closing my eyes. He was utterly professional, his touch clinical yet somehow gentle. "Relax, Ava," he murmured, sensing my tension. "Deep breaths, this won't take long." His voice was calm, soothing. Slowly, my muscles started to unknot. The combination of the therapeutic heat lamp and his skilled hands working on the tense muscles around my shoulder and chest eased the pain considerably. The warmth, the quiet rhythm of his movements, I drifted off. I surfaced slowly, realizing he was standing beside the table, just watching me sleep. Before I was fully awake, he leaned down, hesitated for a fraction of a second, and brushed a feather-light kiss across my forehead. When I left the hospital later with the medication, the nurses at the station were whispering, their eyes following me with open curiosity. The young nurse who'd brought me the meds couldn't contain herself. "Are you Dr. Vance's girlfriend?" she asked eagerly. I shook my head, forcing a small smile. "No." "Oh, but he never does stuff like this for patients, especially not," she gestured vaguely, "that kind of therapy. He personally handled it." Wow, her eyes were wide with admiration, maybe a little envy. "Seriously, we were all talking about it. He's usually so reserved." I glanced back down the empty corridor, but he was gone. A heavy weight settled in my chest. He'd told me to come back for 3 more sessions. I knew I wouldn't. That night, working late to catch up after the unexpected sick day, I got home exhausted just before midnight. Liam called, demanding I come over immediately. He sounded drunk, angry, volatile. I wanted to refuse, to just hang up, but the memory of his veiled threat, the weight of my obligation, held me captive. I sat on my bed for a long time, staring blankly at the wall, before finally grabbing my keys and purse. Halfway there, a text message from him buzzed on my phone. From Liam, "Hey, stop and grab some condoms on the way." Trojans, Magnums, THX. I stared at the message, my face impassive. No anger, no hurt, just a profound, chilling numbness. I deleted the text and continued driving. When I got to the upscale hotel he was apparently staying at, I went to the 24-hour pharmacy nearby, bought what he'd asked for, and went up to his room. Chloe opened the door, wrapped in a plush hotel robe, looking artfully tousled. I handed her the small paper bag without a word and turned to leave. "Ava, where the hell do you think you're going?" "Get back here," Liam's voice, slurred and aggressive, echoed from inside the room. "Liam, don't be mad," Chloe simpered, stepping aside. "Maybe she doesn't want to come in because I'm here." I watched her performance with detached clarity. "What's she got to be upset about?" Liam stumbled towards the door, grabbing my arm and yanking me inside. "She knows I screw around. Pretending to be bothered now." He slammed the door shut. "Stop playing innocent. Waiting till the engagement party? Bullshit. I'm taking what's mine right now." He pushed me roughly onto the sofa, fumbling with the belt of his own robe, his eyes glazed with alcohol and malice. The sight of him, the smell of stale booze and Chloe's cheap perfume clinging to him, the realization that he'd likely just crawled out of bed with her. Bile rose in my throat. He was repulsive, filthy, rotten to the core. As he lunged towards me, a surge of adrenaline of pure revulsion shot through me. I grabbed the heavy glass ashtray from the coffee table and smashed it down hard on the table's edge. It shattered, sharp shards flying. Pain exploded in my right hand as glass sliced into my palm. Blood welled up instantly, bright red against my skin. Chloe screamed. Liam recoiled, momentarily stunned, his drunken haze pierced by shock and maybe a flicker of fear. I scrambled upright, holding my bleeding hand, the jagged base of the ashtray still clutched in my other fist. My voice was eerily calm. "Liam, you wait until the engagement, or we settle this right now. One of us ends up in the hospital, the other in jail. Your choice." I didn't know what I was doing, just buying time, delaying the inevitable. If this was my fate, to be collateral damage in his messed up life, then fine. But not like this. Not tonight. He stared at me, uncertainty flickering in his eyes. Some calculation, some hidden fear seemed to hold him back. He actually took a step backward. Seizing the moment, I stumbled past him, wrenched open the door, and ran. Out of the room, down the corridor, into the elevator. Once outside the hotel, I collapsed onto the curb, retching violently. My right hand throbbed, slick with blood that dripped onto the pavement. The adrenaline faded, replaced by excruciating pain. Shaking, I managed to stand, hail a cab, and directed the driver to the nearest hospital. Only when we pulled up did I realize, with a sinking heart, it was Julian's hospital. Again, I prayed he wasn't on call tonight. The emergency room nurse cleaning the wound was gentle, but the antiseptic stung fiercely. I clenched my jaw, trembling, determined not to cry. All my tears felt used up, shed long ago when my parents died. "It's okay to cry if it hurts. Don't hold it in." A low, familiar voice spoke from behind me. Strong arms encircled me, pulling me back against a warm, solid chest. The faint scent of antiseptic, mixed with a subtle trace of smoke and something clean and uniquely Julian. I knew it was him without looking. The dam broke. Tears streamed down my face, hot and unstoppable. His long fingers gently covered my eyes. "Just breathe through it, Ava. Almost done." My tears soaked his palm, but he didn't pull away. He held me steady until the nurse finished cleaning and bandaging the deep cuts. He drove me back to his apartment, overriding my weak protests that I should go home. My hand was bandaged and useless, so he insisted on helping me shower, his touch surprisingly impersonal, professional, despite the intimacy of the situation. Still, bathing under his ministrations felt deeply unsettling. "I can manage," I mumbled, trying to take the washcloth. Don't be stubborn. You'll get the dressing wet and risk infection. He wrapped me firmly in a large, fluffy towel and carried me into the bedroom, depositing me gently onto the bed. I'm next door if you need anything. Just call out. He brushed a stray strand of hair from my forehead, his touch lingering for a second before he straightened up to leave. Julian, my voice was barely a whisper. I reached out with my good hand, catching the sleeve of his shirt. Stay, please, I don't want to be alone. He looked down at me, his expression unreadable for a long moment. Finally, he nodded. Okay, let me just shower quickly. When he came back, freshly showered and wearing soft pajama pants and a t-shirt, he smelled clean and warm. I instinctively burrowed into his side, wrapping my arms and legs around him, seeking comfort and solidity. He tensed, careful of my injured hand, his body rigid with restraint. Ava, don't tempt me, he warned, his voice strained. I ignored him, burying my face against his chest, inhaling his scent. Julian, I mumbled into his shirt. Do you remember back in college? Bits and pieces. Do you remember that time in the library? The girl who sat across from you, watched you for 2 hours and then fell asleep. A low sound, almost a chuckle, vibrated through his chest. Super embarrassing, right? Not really. Have you ever been in love? The question slipped out before I could stop it. A beat of silence. Then softly, yes, once. My heart squeezed painfully. A sharp, unexpected jealousy twisted inside me. She must have been beautiful, brilliant. She was just a girl. Pretty but ordinary, he murmured, stroking my hair. Talking about her seemed to soften him, lending his voice a tenderness that broke my heart a little. Julian, I pressed closer. Let's not talk about her tonight, okay? Okay, he agreed softly. What do you want to talk about? Have you been with other women? Since you know, no. His answer was immediate, firm. He gently tilted my chin up, forcing me to meet his eyes. He leaned down, his lips brushing mine. Ava, I'm not a casual person. Then why with me? I whispered against his mouth. He didn't answer with words. He kissed me instead, silencing my question, drawing me into a slow, deep exploration that chased away the shadows, at least for a while. I noticed again how he favored kissing my eyes, brushing his lips softly against my closed eyelids. Maybe, I thought dimly, my eyes reminded him of hers, the girl he'd loved. My thoughts drifted, hazy and disconnected, lulled by the warmth and the unexpected safety of his arms. Just before sleep claimed me completely, I thought I heard him whisper something close to my ear, but the words blurred, lost in the encroaching fog. He sighed softly above me, a sound of quiet resignation, then carefully disentangled himself and padded off, presumably for another cold shower. My hand healed quickly over the next few days under his watchful care. During our last dinner together before I planned to leave, Julian put down his fork, his expression serious. Ava, you need to end things with Liam, for good. I shook my head, unable to meet his eyes. Julian, I can't explain everything. But unless Liam agrees to let me go, it's impossible. What hold does he have over you? What do you owe him? I wanted to tell him. About the crushing hospital bills for my mother's ICU stay. The settlement costs from the accident. About how, after the doctors finally declared my mother brain dead, her viable kidney had been donated, fulfilling the organ donor card she and my father had both signed years ago. I hadn't known about it until then. Liam had handled all the paperwork, all the arrangements, while I was too numb with grief to function. Please don't ask, I whispered instead, finally looking up at him. He won't let me go. So I can't leave. I pushed my chair back slowly. Thank you, Julian, for taking care of me these past few days, but I bit my lip, forcing the words out, my eyes stinging. We can't see each other again. I turned and walked out of the dining room before I could lose my nerve. Grabbed my bag, put on my shoes, and left his apartment without looking back. He didn't follow, didn't try to stop me. This was the third time I'd pushed him away. There wouldn't be a fourth. Shortly after, the Carters abruptly moved the engagement date forward. The reason given? Sophie's health was deteriorating rapidly. They wanted to have the celebration while she was still well enough to attend. Carol Carter presented it as a joint decision, but I knew my input was irrelevant. The debt I owed them, the unspoken agreement, meant I had no say. I was the pawn, fulfilling my role. I agreed numbly. The relief on the faces of Liam's parents was palpable. They seemed ecstatic. The engagement party was planned as a lavish affair at a secluded country estate outside the city. Liam and I were required to go out 3 days early to help with final preparations. Invitations went out, a wide net cast to include all their important friends, family, and business associates. Naturally, Julian and his parents were top of the guest list, the Carters' most prized connection. To my surprise, Julian arrived not just with his parents, but with a stunningly beautiful, vivacious young woman clinging affectionately to his arm. They looked comfortable together, radiating an easy intimacy. I caught only a glimpse from across the lawn before forcing myself to look away. It was confirmation. Whatever brief, strange interlude had happened between Julian and me was over. A dream, a moment of madness. Reality had reasserted itself. He was moving on. Good. Julian's mother was exactly as I'd imagined, elegant, warm, impeccably dressed. When Carol Carter introduced me, Mrs. Vance took my hand, her smile kind, her words gracious. Julian, however, remained pointedly aloof. When his mother prompted him to greet me, he offered only a curt, cool nod before turning his attention back to his companion. "Dr. Vance," the young woman beside him murmured, giving his arm a playful tug. Then she smiled brightly at me. "Don't mind him, Julian's just naturally reserved." "It's fine," I replied, managing a polite smile back. I spent the next hour trapped in the role of dutiful fiancé-to-be, circulating with Carol Carter, smiling at strangers, making meaningless small talk. Liam, who always seemed slightly intimidated by Julian, had conveniently vanished to another part of the house. Finally finding a moment alone, I escaped to the powder room, needing a reprieve from the forced smiles and stifling atmosphere. This wasn't my world. My parents were ordinary people, office workers. Our lives had been simple, quiet. This level of wealth, the intricate social maneuvering, the barely veiled sycophancy Carol displayed towards the Vances, it felt alien and suffocating. Listening to the Carters fawn over Julian and his family made my cheeks burn with second-hand embarrassment. I stared at my reflection in the ornate mirror. The expensive dress, the borrowed jewels, it was a costume. I was a marionette playing a part. A wave of longing washed over me for my parents, for my old life, for the simple, unassuming girl I used to be. Tears welled, blurring the reflection, tracing slow paths down my cheeks. And then in the mirror, behind my own tear-streaked image, I saw him, tall, imposing, watching me. My vision swam. It had to be a hallucination. He was outside with his date. Why would he be here? "Why are you hiding in here crying?" His voice, low and resonant, jolted me back to reality, not a hallucination. I started to turn, to wipe my eyes, but he stepped forward, placing his hands gently on my shoulders, keeping me facing the mirror. "I told myself I wouldn't interfere again," he said softly, his breath warm near my ear. He moved closer, until his taller frame partially eclipsed mine in the reflection. He rested his chin lightly on my shoulder, his closeness both unnerving and achingly familiar. "But then I saw you look at me across the lawn, that look in your eyes, and I couldn't stay away." "I didn't." "Didn't what?" he interrupted gently. "Didn't look like your world was ending? Didn't look completely miserable? Ava, your eyes were red-rimmed the moment I walked in here." "I didn't sleep well," I lied, fumbling in my clutch for my powder compact. "Just tired." I tried to shrug his hands off. "Julian, please let go. Someone might see." "We slept together, Ava, multiple times. Isn't it a little late for worrying about appearances?" His voice held a wry, almost bitter edge. "Julian," I pleaded, my voice thick with unshed tears. He seemed to soften then, releasing my shoulders. I quickly dabbed at my eyes, trying to repair the damage to my makeup. He leaned against the marble countertop, idly flicking open and shut a sleek silver lighter, watching me. He made no move to leave. "Aren't you going back out there?" I asked, snapping my compact shut, trying to regain some composure. "Are you?" he countered. I have to. He straightened up slowly, his gaze locking with mine. He held out his hand. Ava, come with me right now. Julian, I stared at him, then at his outstretched hand, my heart pounding against my ribs. Disbelief warred with a sudden, terrifying surge of hope. I won't ask again, Ava. Leave with me, now, yes or no. His eyes burned with an intensity that demanded an answer, reflecting my own small, trapped image back at me. That girl in the mirror, the one who'd only ever dared to worship him from afar in college. The one who'd scribbled his name countless times on scrap paper, only to cross it out, too timid to ever approach. He was the sun, I was just dust motes dancing in its beam. I thought of the scars on my wrist, faint now but still visible reminders of a darker time just after my parents died, when oblivion seemed the only escape. Thought of the crushing weight of obligation to Liam, the constant feeling of being trapped, suffocated. Thought of his casual cruelty, his infidelities, the way he treated me like property. I longed for the courage to slap him, to walk away clean. But always, the debt held me back. Always, I ended up crawling back, accepting the crumbs he offered, a puppet on his strings. Julian was offering a lifeline, a way out, but accepting it felt wrong. Using him to pay my dues, to escape Liam, how would that make me any better than Liam himself, using people for his own ends? Julian deserved better than to be dragged into my sordid mess, to be tainted by association. I couldn't bear the thought of people whispering behind his back, speculating about the high-flying doctor. Vance buying his cousin's cast-off girlfriend. He deserved someone clean, someone whole, someone worthy of his quiet integrity. So I had to push him away. Let the swamp swallow me whole. Let me walk through my own private hell alone. Maybe, if I could somehow emerge on the other side, free and unburdened, maybe then I'd find the courage to tell him how I truly felt. I slowly shook my head, pulling my gaze away from his. The engagement party is in 3 days, Julian. This isn't funny, please don't joke like that. The light in his eyes flickered, dimmed. Before he could speak, I forced myself to continue, the words feeling like shards of glass in my mouth. I thought I made myself clear. It was just sex. A fling, maybe it was even just me getting back at Liam for cheating. A little revenge fuck, you could call it. Revenge? Fuck. He repeated the ugly words slowly, tasting them. He tilted his head, a mirthless, self-deprecating smile twisting his lips. So that's all it was to you? Just revenge? Actually, I pushed harder, needing to make the break absolute final. You were really good, doctor. If you're interested, I wouldn't mind making it a regular thing. No strings attached, of course. I couldn't finish. His face had closed off completely, turning into a mask of cold fury. He didn't say another word, just turned sharply on his heel and walked out, leaving me alone in the sudden, heavy silence. I sagged against the counter, my legs threatening to buckle. My fingers, icy cold, trembled uncontrollably. I pressed them against my face, trying to hold myself together. Julian, I whispered his name, just as I had countless times in my teenage dreams, back when he was just an impossible, shining ideal. I remembered that sun-drenched afternoon in the library. So many students, yet the seat opposite him was empty. Girls hovered nearby, whispering, wanting to sit there but lacking the nerve. Julian Vance had a reputation for being coolly dismissive of unwanted advances. No one wanted to risk public rejection. I hadn't dared either. Clutching my textbooks, I was heading upstairs when my roommate, mischievous and impulsive, shoved me forward, right towards his table. Mortified, I nearly tripped, ready to apologize and flee. But Julian just looked up briefly, his expression neutral, before returning his gaze to the thick medical textbook open before him. His fingers, long and clean, turned a page bathed in sunlight. It was a perfect, stolen moment. I sank into the chair opposite him, my heart hammering. After a moment, I managed to stammer, Is anyone sitting here?" He shook his head almost imperceptibly, pulling another stack of notes slightly closer to his side of the table, clearing space for me. My pulse leaped. I hastily arranged my own books, pretending to study, but I didn't read a single word that afternoon. I was too aware of him, sitting so close I could see the faint shadow his eyelashes cast on his cheekbones. I watched him, mesmerized, completely losing track of time, until my eyelids grew heavy and I drifted off, right there at the table. His gentle touch on my shoulder woke me. He was packing up. He handed me a tissue, a faint hint of amusement in his eyes. He pointed discreetly towards my chin, then at the book my head had been resting on. "Might want to clean that up," he murmured, his voice low and melodious. "The drool." My face exploded in heat. I wanted to disappear. I fled the library and spent days cringing at the memory, avoiding any place I might run into him again. Soon after, he graduated. I watched from a distance as he took graduation photos on the campus green, politely declining requests from swooning underclassmen to pose with him. Head down, I hurried past with my roommate, pretending not to see him. I never heard him call my name, a questioning note in his voice. "Ava, want to get a picture?" The next time our paths crossed was 3 years later. I was Liam's girlfriend. He was Liam's cousin. A distant relation, technically, but the Carters actively cultivated the connection, eager to bask in the reflected glory of the Vance name. At that first Ray meeting at Liam's parents' house, Julian had spared me only a single, brief glance. He barely spoke a word to me all evening, contributing to an awkward, strained atmosphere at the dinner table. Liam had tried to reassure me later. "That's just Julian. Brilliant, successful, comes from money, makes him arrogant, you know, high standards." But I didn't think he was arrogant. A little reserved, yes, but not dismissive. I'd seen glimpses of the doctor. He became the one who was patient and kind with anxious patients, explaining complex procedures with clarity and empathy. I'd been his patient. I knew the fundamental decency beneath the cool exterior. The night before we were due to leave for the country estate, Liam picked me up for dinner at his parents' house. The familiar, brightly lit mansion felt different tonight, oppressive, like the gaping maw of some predatory beast waiting to devour me, bones and all. Sophie joined us for dinner. She looked slightly better, wearing a touch of makeup, her usual pallor somewhat diminished. She even ladled soup into my bowl herself, her voice soft. "Ava, soon-to-be sister-in-law, have some more broth. You need to keep your strength up," she offered a shy smile. Looking at her closely, I was struck by a sudden, unsettling realization. Chloe, Liam's latest fling, bore a faint resemblance to Sophie. And now that I thought about it, hadn't many of Liam's other women shared certain features with his sister? A creeping horror began to prickle at the back of my neck. "Yes, dear, eat up," Carol chimed in, her eyes scanning me critically. "You're looking a bit thin, Ava. Have you lost weight?" Sophie, citing fatigue, excused herself early. After the meal, Carol personally brought me a cup of tea, brewed specially, she said. I looked down at the steaming, fragrant liquid in the delicate china cup. A faint, bitter smile touched my lips. I waited until it had cooled slightly, then lifted the cup and drank it down in one go. Carol let out a quiet sigh of relief. Liam's father visibly relaxed. Liam, who had been engrossed in his phone, glanced up just as I finished the tea, a flicker of something hesitation. Guilt, crossing his face before he quickly looked away, resuming his game as if nothing had happened. My heart felt like a block of ice in my chest. I lowered the cup. "Liam," I said, my voice steady. "Walk with me outside for a minute?" They all looked surprised. Liam, after a moment's pause, put down his phone and followed me out onto the meticulously manicured lawn. The night sky was clear, dotted with stars. A perfect night. In 2 days, guests would arrive for our engagement celebration. A celebration I knew would never happen. I stopped near a flower bed, turning to face him. "Liam," I said, keeping my voice even, "you didn't need to go to all this trouble." His head snapped up. "What are you talking about?" "The tea. The engagement party, all of it. You just needed an organ donor consent form. I would have signed it." "Ava." His face changed, shedding its casual mask, replaced by wary alarm. "You know, Sophie's first transplant is rejecting badly," I stated flatly. "She needs another kidney, urgently. When you insisted on that comprehensive physical for me last month, supposedly for insurance purposes, I started putting the pieces together. Ava? He ran a hand through his hair, looking genuinely distressed, almost pleading. Okay, yes, no point hiding it. Sophie needs a kidney. After your physical, the doctors confirmed you're a perfect match. My vision started to blur at the edges. The drug in the tea was beginning to take effect. But I needed to know, needed to hear it. If one kidney could pay my debt, could buy my freedom, then it was a price I was willing to pay. Let them take it. Let me leave broken, but finally, blessedly free. But his next words shattered that desperate hope into a million pieces. Honestly, he sighed, shaking his head ruefully, if we'd known back then that your kidney was the better match, we could have skipped the whole mess with your mother's. What did you say? I swayed, reaching out blindly, trying to grab his arm for support. He shoved me away easily. I stumbled and fell onto the cool, damp grass. Might as well tell you the truth now, Ava, he said, his voice chillingly matter-of-fact. You're going to be joining your parents soon anyway. The accident? Not an accident. We needed your mother's kidney for Sophie. We'd confirmed through certain channels that she was a compatible donor. He crouched down slightly, looking almost sympathetic. Your parents had both signed donor cards, which was convenient, but Sophie couldn't wait for them to die naturally. We had to expedite things. Sorry, Ava, but she's my only sister. My family means everything. I'd do anything for her, kill anyone. I lay on the ground, the drug stealing the strength from my limbs, making the world tilt and swim. My parents murdered for a kidney. Liam stood up, dusting off his hands. Don't worry, though, he added, almost as an afterthought, his voice laced with a cruel irony. My cousin Julian is doing the surgery to take your kidney, top surgeon in the city. He'll stitch you up real neat. He paused, then delivered the final, devastating blow. He took out your mother's kidney too, very skilled hands. When my eyes fluttered open, the world swam into a hazy focus of bright lights and masked figures. I was strapped down, immobile on a cold, narrow table. Someone was prepping my abdomen, the icy sting of antiseptic sharp against my skin. I blinked, trying to clear my vision. Everyone wore surgical scrubs, caps, and masks, their identities obscured. Then the lead surgeon stepped up to the table, gloved hands held ready. Our eyes met. A pair of dark, chillingly familiar eyes stared back at me for a beat, then flickered away, devoid of recognition, utterly indifferent. Panic flared for a second, then receded, replaced by a strange, almost peaceful numbness. I wasn't dead yet. They hadn't cut me open yet. But the eyes, they were startlingly like Julian's, but colder, harder, not him. Definitely not him. I couldn't move, couldn't speak, a lamb to the slaughter. The surgeon picked up a scalpel, the blade glinting under the harsh lights. He pressed the tip against my skin suddenly, the operating room doors burst open with violent force. Everyone froze, heads snapping towards the intrusion. Uniformed police officers swarmed into the room, but my eyes found only one person, Julian. He stood in the doorway, starkly out of place in a crisp white shirt, looking impossibly clean amidst the chaos. And then he was moving towards me, pushing past officers, his face pale, taut with fury and fear. As he reached me, gently starting to undo the restraints, some blood from the initial, shallow incision the other surgeon had made smeared onto his perfect white sleeve. A pang of absurd guilt hit me. Sorry for messing up your shirt, I tried to say, but no sound came out. My body felt disconnected, unresponsive. I could only blink, hoping my eyes conveyed the apology. Julian's own eyes were bloodshot, raw with emotion. He gathered me carefully into his arms, his jaw clenched so tight a muscle jumped in his cheek. Ava, stay with me, I won't let anything happen to you. Hold on, he looked down at me, his voice trembling but fierce with protective energy. I wanted to tell him I was okay, relatively speaking. They hadn't taken anything yet, but the feeling of being held, protected, cherished, it was intoxicatingly warm, overwhelmingly real. I let my head rest against his chest, clinging to the solid beat of his heart beneath my ear. Even after Liam's poisonous lies about Julian taking my mother's kidney, about him performing this surgery, I hadn't believed it. Not for a second. not Julian. I remembered seeing a video online years ago of him taking his physician's oath after medical school. His eyes shining with earnest conviction, his voice ringing with sincerity as he spoke the words. He was fundamentally good. He wouldn't be part of something like this. He was Julian, clean, honorable, and I needed to be clean too. Free. But I'd been naive, stupidly thinking I could bargain my way out with just one kidney. I hadn't grasped the depth of the Carters' depravity. Their family hadn't just stumbled into wealth, they'd built an empire on the black market organ trade. It apparently started years ago, with an ambitious aunt trading a kidney for a position beside a dying tycoon. That transaction opened the floodgates, and the Carters found their gruesome path to riches, trafficking healthy organs to desperate, wealthy buyers clinging to life. Perhaps it was cosmic irony, then, that the rot eventually touched their own family, sickening their precious Sophie. But their solution only perpetuated the cycle of violence, costing my parents their lives. And they'd planned the same for me. The drugged tea, the isolated estate, the engagement party as cover. They hadn't risked another accident damaging the merchandise. Their plan was chillingly efficient. Harvest all usable organs first, then stage a fiery car crash on the way to the non-existent party. Destroy the evidence. A tragic accident claiming the life of the poor, orphaned fiancé to be. Liam would play the grieving groom, earning sympathy, while the family profited from my dismemberment. Another nameless victim swallowed by their greed. But it ended here, with me. Liam, his parents, and several other implicated family members were arrested. The evidence against them was overwhelming years of illicit activities, multiple unexplained deaths linked back to their network. The charges included conspiracy, illegal organ trafficking, and murder. Justice would be slow but inevitable. Sophie Carter, facing the shock of her family's arrest and the sudden cessation of the illicit medical support keeping her alive, suffered cardiac arrest and kidney failure. She died on the operating table meant for me. The surgeon who had operated on my mother, the one Liam had tried to implicate Julian for, was also arrested. Bought by the Carters years ago, he'd maintained a respectable facade while secretly participating in their horrific crimes. He, too, would face the consequences. Julian, it turned out, had suspected something was amiss with the Carters for a couple of years. Sophie's miraculous recoveries, the convenient, near instantaneous availability of perfectly matched organs whenever she critically needed one, it defied probability, raised red flags for someone as meticulous and observant as him. My disappearance, preceded by that blank text message I'd sent him from the Carters' house, just before drinking the tea erasing the desperate plea I couldn't bring myself to send, had been the final catalyst. He knew something was terribly wrong. He'd alerted the authorities, his suspicions finally solidifying into certainty. Later, sitting by my hospital bed after my own minor surgery to close the incision, Julian was furious. Not loud, shouting furious, but a quiet, intense anger that was almost more terrifying. "Ava," he said, his voice tight, controlled. "These people, the ones involved in this kind of trade, they have no conscience. No limits." He ran a hand over his face, looking exhausted but wired. "Do you understand what they were planning? When I reviewed the surgical setup, the equipment they had ready, they weren't just going to take a kidney. They intended to harvest everything. Your heart, liver, lungs, corneas, everything viable." His eyes bored into mine. "If you ever do something so recklessly self-sacrificing again, put yourself in danger like that without trusting me, without letting me help, I don't know what I'll do." He looked genuinely shaken, the cool composure completely gone. I did feel a delayed tremor of fear realizing how close I'd come, but mostly I felt safe. Cared for. Loved. The man I loved had literally saved my life, charging in like a white knight, albeit a very modern one in a bespoke shirt. "Julian," I reached for his hand. He tried to pull away, still caught up in his anger and residual fear. I persisted, capturing his fingers with my good hand. He stiffened, trying to withdraw again. I winced dramatically. "Ow, my stitches." "Don't move," instantly, his anger evaporated, replaced by professional concern. He leaned over me, gently helping me lie back flat, his hands hovering near my bandaged abdomen, checking for any sign of distress. His eyes, scanning my face, were filled with such raw tenderness it made my heart ache with sweetness. "Julian," I whispered, reaching up to touch his cheek. "Hold me, please." He hesitated, then sighed, carefully settling onto the edge of the bed and gathering me gently into his arms, mindful of my injuries. "Julian," I murmured against his ear. "That day at the hospital when you were examining me, why did your ears get so red?" As predicted, a faint pink blush immediately colored the tips of his ears. He tried to subtly pull back, but I tightened my grip, pressing a soft kiss to the sensitive skin just below his earlobe. "You're a surgeon. You see bodies all the time. Do other women make your ears turn red?" "Ava," his breath hitched. "You need to behave, be more demure." "Do you like me demure, doctor?" I teased, tilting my head back to look at him. He frowned slightly, clearly struggling between propriety and something else. "You can be slightly less demure," he conceded reluctantly, "but only with me." Seeing my mock pout, he sighed again, a small smile finally touching his lips. "All right, fine. Be however makes you happy, Ava." It became his mantra in the years that followed. Knowing I had no family left, he wrapped me in a fierce, protective love, determined to shield me from any further pain, prioritizing my happiness above all else. The day we made our relationship official, Julian formally introduced me to his family and close friends. And maybe it was a coincidence, or maybe it was his own subtle way of rewriting the past, but he introduced me with words that echoed Liam's cruel announcement, yet filled them with warmth and sincerity. "Everyone," he said, his arm possessively around my waist, "this is Ava. No confusion this time. She's the real deal, your one and only future sister-in-law." The beautiful young woman I'd seen him with at the disastrous engagement party his cousin, Clara, it turned out beamed at us. "Ava, I knew it. I told Julian you were the one he was hung up on." She gave me a hug. "Seriously, the moment we walked into that awful party, his eyes were glued to you." She winked. "Good taste, though, 'cause Ava's gorgeous." "I like her too," I blushed, looking up at Julian. Maybe the universe did have a way of balancing the scales. What you lose in one area, you gain back, unexpectedly, beautifully, in another. "What are you looking at?" he murmured, smoothing my hair back, his eyes soft with affection and a possessiveness that no longer felt threatening, only cherished. "Just how ridiculously handsome you are," I sighed, leaning into him. For a moment, it felt just like that stolen library afternoon, full of impossible, adolescent longing, except now it was real. He cleared his throat, trying FOR Chinese letter restraint modesty, but I saw the pleasure in his eyes. "And this ridiculously handsome man is all yours now. Forever, happy." Of course, I was happy, overwhelmed with it. Later that evening, when no one was looking, I pulled him aside, stood on my tiptoes, and stole a quick kiss, pressing my lips against the sharp line of his jaw. He drew a sharp breath, his fingers tightening on my hand, his skin suddenly warm. "Careful, Ava," he whispered, his voice husky. "It's not dark yet." But I held onto his hand, pulling him down a quiet corridor away from the main gathering, stopping under the soft glow of a sconce. The moonlight streamed through a nearby window. "Ava," he started, trying to gently pull me back towards the party. I reached up, cupping his face, tracing the lines I knew so well now. "Dr. Vance," I murmured, mimicking my earlier attempt at seduction, but this time infused with real love, real playfulness. "That fibrocystic thing, I think it's flaring up again. A little sore tonight. Maybe you need to examine me again." My hand slid down his chest, capturing his, bringing it up to rest over my heart, pressing it gently against me. "Your previous treatments didn't quite work." "Maybe we need a different approach," he countered, his voice dropping to a low rumble. He leaned down, his lips finding mine, the moonlight painting silver streaks across his hair. "I read a study suggests regular massage by the patient's partner can be highly effective in alleviating symptoms." He kissed me deeply, our fingers interlaced, his thumb stroking the back of my hand. "Ava," he murmured against my lips, pulling back just enough to look into my eyes. "Him?" I was lost in the kiss, dizzy with happiness. "I told you once that I loved a girl back in college." My eyes snapped open, a flicker of old insecurity rising. I started to pull away. He held me fast. A girl who fell asleep right in front of me in the library. His eyes were soft, filled with a gentle, reminiscent smile. I watched her sleep for a long time, just watched her. He paused, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear. When I woke her up, I pointed to her textbook. "I remember," I whispered, my cheeks warming at the memory of the drool. "I left my phone number tucked inside that book, Ava." My jaw dropped. "You, what?" I stared at him, stunned. All this time, I'd been so consumed by my own embarrassment, I'd never even thought to look closely at the book he'd indicated. He smiled, a slow, rueful curve of his lips. "You never found it. Never called." He drew me closer, wrapping his arms tightly around me, burying his face in my hair. "But it doesn't matter now. What's meant to be mine eventually finds its way back." He pressed a kiss to my temple, his voice thick with emotion. "You, Ava, you were my most important lost and found."